I've always been someone who finds comfort in the dark. While most people feel a sense of dread when the sun goes down, I feel a sense of peace. That was probably my first mistake. My name is Elias, and in the summer of 2022, I was looking for a way to make some extra money while finishing my degree. I stumbled upon a listing on a local job board that seemed too good to pass up. Night shift security, private construction site, $35 an hour, minimal duties. It sounded perfect, too perfect. The location was a massive office complex still under construction on the very edge of the city. It was a skeletal giant made of raw concrete and jagged glass, surrounded by hectares of overgrown fields and rotting trees. When I met the site manager, Miller, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. He didn't ask for a resume. He didn't ask for my background. He just handed me a heavy ring of rusty keys, a high-intensity LED flashlight, and pointed toward a small, portable metal cabin near the main gate. "The rules are simple," Miller said. His voice was gravelly and dry. "Stay in the booth, watch the monitors. The building isn't powered fully, so the upper floors are pitch black. Don't go up there unless you see a fire. The elevators are disconnected from the grid. They don't work. If you hear anything, just stay inside and lock the door." He didn't wait for a reply. He climbed into his truck and sped away, leaving me alone in the deafening silence of the construction site. As the sun began to sink behind the jagged horizon, casting long, twisted shadows across the concrete floor, the first 2 nights were exactly what I expected. Boring. The security booth was cramped, smelling of stale coffee and old cigarettes. It had a bank of 4 CRT monitors. Monitors 1 and 2 covered the perimeter fence. Monitor 3 showed the main lobby, and Monitor 4 was focused on the loading dock. The rest of the 12-story building was a mystery. Since the wiring wasn't finished, there were no cameras on the upper floors. Everything changed on the 3rd night. It was exactly 11:15 p.m. I was sitting there listening to a podcast when a flicker on Monitor 3 caught my eye. Monitor 3 showed the main lobby, a vast empty space filled with bags of cement and stacks of drywall. The screen was grainy, covered in dancing static, but I saw it clearly. A shadow moved near the elevator bank. It wasn't the slow, drifting shadow of a cloud passing the moon. It was fast, purposeful. I leaned in, my face inches from the glass screen. My heart began to thump against my ribs. "Hello?" I whispered to the empty room. The shadow didn't reappear. I checked the perimeter cameras. The gates were locked. The fences were clear. There was no way anyone could have gotten in without me seeing them. I tried to convince myself it was a bug crawling over the camera lens, but the movement had been too heavy, too human. 5 minutes later, the silence was shattered. From deep within the concrete shell of the building, a sound echoed. Clang. It was the sound of heavy metal striking metal. Then came a low, rhythmic grinding, the sound of massive steel cables being pulled under immense tension. My blood ran cold. I knew that sound. It was the sound of an elevator motor engaging. But Miller had been clear. The elevators were off-grid. They were physically disconnected from the power supply. I stepped out of the booth, the freezing night air hitting my face like a slap. I walked toward the building's entrance, my flashlight beam cutting a path through the dark. I entered the lobby, and the sound grew louder. A faint ding resonated through the air. It was the digital chime of an elevator reaching its floor. I found myself standing in front of the elevator bank. My flashlight beam swept over the floor indicator. It was dark, dead. And yet the doors to elevator B were slowly sliding open. They groaned, the metal screeching against the tracks as if they hadn't been moved in years. I shined my light inside the car. It wasn't empty. In the very center of the small metallic room sat a single, tattered wooden chair. It was an old kitchen chair, completely out of place in a modern construction site. It was facing the back wall of the elevator. My breath hitched. Someone had placed that there. Someone was in the building with me. Right now. I felt a sudden sharp prickle on the back of my neck. I slowly turned my head, my flashlight shaking in my hand. 20 feet away, behind a massive concrete pillar, I saw it. A hand, a pale skeletal hand with long, dirty fingers. It was gripping the edge of the pillar. As soon as my light hit it, the hand vanished, pulling back into the darkness. I didn't scream. My throat felt like it had been filled with sand. I backed away from the elevator, but as I did, I heard a faint electronic click. I looked up at the ceiling of the elevator car. There, tucked into the corner of the molding, was a tiny red LED light. It was a hidden spy camera, and it was pointed directly at where I had been standing. I realized then that this wasn't a random intruder. This was a game. I turned and ran for the stairs, my boots thundering on the concrete. As I scrambled down to the ground floor, I heard footsteps echoing mine, but they weren't behind me. They were below me. Every time I ran, the footsteps ran. Every time I stopped to catch my breath, the footsteps stopped. Whoever it was, they knew exactly where I was. I burst through the lobby doors and sprinted for my car. I didn't even look back to lock the gate. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so violently I dropped them twice in the dirt. I finally got the engine to roar to life and slammed the car into reverse. As I sped away, my headlights swept across the security booth. My heart nearly stopped. The door to the booth, the door I had locked just minutes ago, was wide open. A figure was standing inside, sitting in my chair, staring at the monitors. In the rearview mirror, as I reached the main road, I saw him one last time. He had stepped out of the booth and was standing under the single flickering streetlight near the gate. He raised a hand and waved. A slow, rhythmic wave that felt like a promise. I didn't go back. I called Miller the next morning from the safety of a crowded cafe. He was silent for a long time after I told him what happened. Then he told me something that made me lose my appetite for a week. "We checked the vents, Elias," Miller said, his voice trembling. "In the ceiling directly above your security booth, we found a sleeping bag, some empty water bottles, and a laptop. He'd been living in the crawl space right above your head for the last 3 nights. The laptop was connected to that hidden camera in the elevator. He wasn't trying to steal anything. He was just watching you." The police never found the man. They found the chair, the camera, and hours of footage of me sitting in that booth, completely unaware that someone was just inches above me, filming my every move. I moved across the country a month later. I don't work nights anymore, and every time I hear the ding of an elevator, I feel the ghost of those pale, thin fingers reaching out from the dark.